Stick around following every noon Vikings game this season for Vikings Overtime, hosted by Paul Meat Sauce Lambert, presented by Park Chrysler Jeep in Burnsville. Catch them all right here on KFAN and the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey, it is a Talkback Tuesday for Minnesota Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell. So please go to the free iHeartRadio app and leave up to 30 seconds of a question for Kevin O'Connell, who will be on the radio show 1 hour from now. We will sift our way through them and to drop one in for the head coach on a Tuesday provided by Sukup and Sukup.com. That's what happens when we come to the Vikings facility on Tuesdays. And what else happens is we give a fan an opportunity, a listener an opportunity to leave a talkback question for head coach Kevin O'Connell. It's the free iHeartRadio app. And you can, if you're so inclined, to do it right now. Ben Goessling, a scribe for the Star Tribune, StarTribune.com, at Ben Goessling via Twitter. His appearance is courtesy of Standard Heating and Air, StandardHeating.com. Standard Heating and Air, StandardHeating.com. It's not standard at this stage of the season to hear the name of a quarterback who once was ballyhooed. However, it's heating up around the National Football League, given Daniel Jones cleared waivers. So what do you know about that, or what can you share about that? And good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it is. That's going to be a talker this week. I'm quite certain of it. Kevin O'Connell got asked about it yesterday after I think Adam Schefter reported over the weekend that the Vikings would have some interest. He did not exactly shoot it down. He said he's been a big fan of Daniel Jones, said he doesn't really want to get into it at this time. There was a fair amount of opening there, I think, to read into it what you will. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes some sense for them to be interested because
why?
They're going to need some version of this, of Sam Darnold next year, just because you're going to have J.J. McCarthy coming off the knee. He should be fine, should be healthy, ready to go, but he's still going to be a rookie quarterback. You're going to need somebody to go with him. And if you sign Daniel Jones now, you get him in your building, you start to kind of get in advance on that process. He will also, I believe, well, you sign him to 1 year, you can sign him to whatever you wanted. I suppose you could sign him to more than 1 year, and then you have that covered, or at least you get a look at him to see, do you want to bring him back in 2025?
So the Giants would be on the hook for all that cash.
Yep.
Now that he cleared waivers.
Yep. All of the dead money stays with them. So basically you're starting over on his deal, which can look however you want it to look.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it makes some sense. And he's got to be looking at this and saying, okay, they've done this with Sam Darnold. Kirk Cousins had some of the best years of his career here. They figure out how to get a little bit out of Josh Dobbs in short order. Nick Mullins comes in and has played serviceably in the past and has come in at a couple big spots as a cold reliever this year, including on Sunday. So if you're Daniel Jones, I think you'd be looking at this and saying, I'm not going to go somewhere and get the starting job and put up big stats the rest of this year. I need to go somewhere that can kind of be a rehabilitation kind of spot for my career.
Yeah.
This seems like a good fit for him as well. And his agent, Brian Murphy, has done a lot of business with the Vikings over the years.
Harrison Cousins'
Smith,
agent, right?
No, Mike McCartney is Cousins. Okay. It's Harrison Smith. It's Kyle Rudolph. It's Everson Griffin. It's anybody who went to Notre Dame. I think Anthony Barr was through there. So the Vikings know his agent quite well, and I don't think it would be something I would be shocked to see happen.
So if it happened, he goes to the practice squad.
Yeah, I would think.
So you sign him, he goes to the practice squad.
Yeah.
Well, that gives a team, say, like the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, because it just came up before you walked in about, Daniel Jones moving forward.
Yeah.
I kind of laid it out the way you did, too, is that look at what you're going to have or not have next year. I'd roll the dice. Darnold's done enough to get a fat deal somewhere else, and good for him. Hey, keep getting better every single game. Maybe this team will go to the Super Bowl, and you'll make more money. And then, just like you said it, you got the rookie off the knee.
Yep.
And after that, it's muddied. So Jones and McCarthy kind of play the same way too.
Yeah, they do.
Good arms, natural movers, and on the bigger side, with not tall or thick like Caleb Williams or Will Levis, but they're not Kyler Murray diminutive.
Right.
And tell me if you agree with this, because I didn't catch the press conference live yesterday, but I watched it back, and then I looked at like your tweets and stuff like that. But if you listen closely enough to Kevin O'Connell, and I played it back 2.5, 3 times yesterday. I've said this 9 to noon before, and I stick by it. If you listen closely enough to Kevin O'Connell, he'll give you the answer to the puzzle. Because he's not. I mean, he may white lie it, or he may divert attention, or something like that. But he's not. We're not talking about this. Only people who are on the roster on to Arizona. He's not that guy.
No.
And his answer yesterday opened my eyes and opened my heart to the fact that, wow, I mean, this could happen here.
Yeah. He did not, because I'm sure he knew that it was being talked about, and I'm sure he knew the question was coming. He did not do anything to dissuade anybody from thinking this is a possibility. And, he could come back and say, well, I didn't say either that we are interested in him, but the dance is one that you see a lot of people play, and you can play it a couple different ways. Like you said, it could very much be, nope, he's not here. We'll let the front office worry about players we might or might not be able to acquire. My focus is on this team.
Right.
He didn't go there with it. So, I mean, even saying, I think I'm a big fan of Daniel Jones. I've liked the way he's worked. I'm sure he also knows that a lot of people hear those things. Agents hear those things. Players may hear those things. I didn't think it was an accident the way he answered it the way he did. So, I think it's certainly something to have our antenna up about.
Well, and with Daniel, it's for those who would formulate the opinion why he's completely broken. Okay, well, those are the same people who said that about Sam Darnold. This is a 9-win team. And Darnold's had his problems, and this is by far the greatest opportunity he's had in his life professionally. And like I said a lot into the season, and I still feel this way, the pressure's on Sam Darnold here. I mean, the majority of the pressure to perform is on Darnold, more so than the ones calling the plays and stuff, because they're proven with things they can do when 18 gets quadrupled. Okay, well, do this and watch. Do this and watch. So to see Sam push through from that Jacksonville game, through the Tennessee game, through, I think it was 2 passes that he forced to Jefferson last game, definitely one, but he forced one, but I think he intentionally threw it incredibly low. So the visual is like, okay, well, there are 3 around there, but you know what? If I just raise this thing, elevate this thing a little bit, then he would have got it. So that came back. And then now Sam gets to see, hey, if you listen, and if you follow the plan and you don't freak out, this guy gets 162. This guy gets 109 in the second half in overtime. This guy runs for 100. It may not be like that every week, but O'Connell in this group working with broken toys. I mean, they put those things back together and sell them at a high price. It does become a thing where if you're a quarterback, and J.J. McCarthy talked about this before the draft too, when he was drafted here, he said every one of those 6 quarterbacks that went in the first round had this as their top destination, that every single one of them, from Caleb Williams down to Bo Nix, said this is the place I want to be, because they looked at the talent around them, certainly Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson on down the line, but they also, I think, looked at the system, the coaching staff, the opportunities they'd have around them to get better, and the Sam Darnold experience here has done nothing to dissuade anybody from that, because he had those couple games where you're sitting there thinking, okay, the slide is coming, the turnovers are ramping up, this is going to be the beginning of the end, and he's put it back together and had 2 of his best games of the season the last 2 weeks. It's not against the Lions in the playoffs or something like that yet, but that's a big spot on Sunday to come back. You're 2nd and 17 backed up. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if they don't get a completion here on 2nd down, you're punting. You're probably giving them the ball back in decent field position. Caleb Williams has been on a heater. They could lose this game in that fashion. And then he comes back and says, I'm going to take a completion to Hawkinson. I'm going to take a completion to Jordan Addison for the first down. I mean, the level of just playing within the system and making big-time quarterback decisions has been impressive the last couple of weeks, and you're not seeing that slide happening. So it's an endorsement of what they've done with him, and probably an endorsement of what they could do with somebody else as well. So with the coordinator speaking today, Messrs. Flores, Phillips, and Daniels. Do you have intel on what happened on the onside kick? Like what didn't happen? Like who was supposed to go where or something like that? Or is that something Daniels will get hit with today?
Well, he'll probably get into it a little bit, but I think Johnny Munt said that his job on that was basically to block so that somebody else could pick it up, and then it hit him in the foot. He said, if I had it over to do again, I'd just pick it up.
Yeah.
So I think it was one of those where he was trying to do his job, but then the situation changes because of the bounce. And then
does he elaborate on whether he saw it or not? Because one thing I was curious about, we talked about it during Fan Line, was even kind of the idea, what's his responsibility to know where that is on the field? Because he just kind of, I hate to say it, he looked clueless as he was pushing forward and that ball was just trickling right to him.
Yeah, I don't know if he saw it or not. I mean, I when you say if I had it to do over again, how many variables are you changing there?
Yeah.
I mean, is it I would do the same thing but just pick it up because I saw it, or is it I wish I saw it so that I could pick it up? I mean, that I don't know. But, yes, it was one of those things where you see so few of those work, it almost isn't a bad strategy to just say, let's put it into a crowd and hope it bounces off somebody rather than trying to get it to go 10 yards. I mean, I don't know that anybody's going to make a habit of that, but when the odds are so low on the normal ones, it doesn't seem like the worst way to do it, just to try to incite chaos.
What did you think of Andrew Van Ginkel's game Sunday? And the reason I ask is because you wrote a story about it, or was it part of a news?
I think I just tweeted something this morning.
No, it's okay. It was a tweet. Okay, what'd you think?
I thought he was all over the place. I mean, he was in the backfield. He almost picked off Caleb Williams on another screen, and Williams pulls the ball down and says, this guy's trying to jump it.
Never seen a quarterback hitch and pump on a screen.
Yep.
I've never seen that in my life.
Yeah.
Van Ginkel had that thing so sniffed out.
Yep, he had that one. He had the one where he dropped way back into coverage and almost gets a hand on it, maybe to make a diving interception on the Williams throw, I think, to Keenan Allen.
Top 3 throw of the year.
Yeah. Well, and then the other one with Williams, I'm sure we'll get into this, but the one he comes back with to Swift after that, where he's rolling to his right and drops it in a bucket.
Oh, the looper?
Ridiculous.
Yes.
I mean, that guy is going to be
it was like an Ephus pitch.
Yeah, he's going to be a problem in the NFC North for a long time. But the one I tweeted out this morning, Williams breaks the pocket, and I think Van Ginkel and Cashman, it looked like they were probably spying Williams a little bit with either of those guys at times. They both kind of break one way. Van Ginkel probably takes a step too far the other way, and so he's trying to catch up. But the closing speed and the hustle to get to Williams on the sideline, it almost knocks the ball out of his hand as he's getting to the sideline. There were a couple of those, too, where he's in position to make plays for turnovers. Nearly had a couple of strips. But, yeah, he was just, I mean, the amount of ground he covered on Sunday was awfully impressive.
Well, let's see what your answer is to this, because, I mean, I said it to some people after the game, said it on the radio yesterday, and I'm going to lay it out to you like this, and then ask you why. Why did it finish the way it did? If we're coming into that game, and I'm like, Darnold's going to have his first 300-yard performance as quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, 300-plus, with no picks. The running back's going to go for more than 100 and a rare rushing touchdown by a non-quarterback.
Right.
Addison's going to have 162. The tight end's going to have 114, 109 in the second half. Oh, and by the way, Grenard and Van Ginkel, your 2 top sackers.
Yeah.
They're going to combine for 3 sacks. How do you think this game? Oh, and the kicker's going to go 6 for 6.
Yeah.
He's going to hit everything. How do you think that? So why? I mean, why did it end up the way it did?
Yeah, I mean, you're thinking comfortable blowout with those numbers, and some of those obviously get inflated because of the fact they played a fifth quarter, or most of the fifth quarter. But yeah, in general, you're looking at that and saying, this formula has been one that will win games on the road. And O'Connell basically said, we had a lot of those elements of it, but then you fumble with Aaron Jones on the goal line early, and then the special teams mistakes late. That could have been a game that's in the bag. In fact, I had
that DeAndre Carter kick return. It was Dallas Turner's best play as a pro.
Yeah.
And secondly, what a kick in the bleep. Holy cow.
Yeah. Those things are the only way that game doesn't become a kind of a laugher at the end. I had most of that game story, just kind of the short thing we file at the gun after several years of having to sweat it out with writing the full complete game story we've said.
And then you get a Roma Shadood.
Yep. And there's been a number of those over the years, whether they win or they lose. But so we've shortened that up, but I had most of that ready to go. I have not had to unwind the game story like that in a while. And it's probably my own fault because I should know better with this team than to think anything is just in the bag. But that one probably should have been, and all of the special teams mistakes late become the reason that they come back.
Is it difficult if you step back and spend some time thinking about how good do I think this team is? Is it difficult to wrap the mind around this is a good team, not very good, this is a very good team, not elite, or wow, this might be an elite team? Is it difficult to figure out exactly, at 9-2, how good this team is?
I think a little bit, because they still do a lot of things. I mean, this second winning streak has not been as dominant as the first one, which, you could say that's a good problem to have. Mm-hmm. 2 winning streaks of 4 games or more, but there have been enough moments of turnovers or, just kind of things that you don't want to see a contending team do to say, okay, how effective is this team going to be when they get into the playoffs? And it's not Jacksonville, Tennessee, Chicago. It's the Lions, it's the Eagles, it's the Packers for the third time, or the Lions for the third time for that matter.
It's the Lions and Eagles. Yeah, and that's it right now.
Yeah. But if you face one of those teams, and they wouldn't in the first round, but they probably would see one of those teams in the second round. I mean, if the way it seeds right now, they certainly would.
Well, Nordo laid it out before the show. He's like, the Vikings are going to be a 14-win team that doesn't win his division.
Yeah, it's very possible.
I guess I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, that's very possible.
We're going to have to go beat. We're going to have to go beat Kirk on the road in Atlanta as a 14-win team, just for the prize of then what you're talking about. Go to Philadelphia or Detroit.
Yeah, awesome.
And that came up this weekend about
Arizona out of that.
If the team wins all these games and everything, but doesn't win the division, it could be, say, the Rams. Win the NFC West with a requisite record that would send a team like the Vikings there,
which is not an assignment you'd probably be terribly crazy about either.
But the person was like, it'd be cooler to go there and stay here and SoFi and all. I'm like, are you out of your mind? I mean, McVay or Morris with no tomorrow. Who
Stafford
do you want and
Kirk would know tomorrow?
Right. Who do you want and why?
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts and Drake London, or Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, that's a no-brainer to me. Man. I mean, you'd want the Falcons in that scenario. And we have seen Kirk Cousins practice against this defense a lot, and he's had a lot of trouble with this defense last year.
That's interesting you say that. That's interesting you say that, because remember the first training camp against Flores defense. And it was bugging O'Connell. I mean, the defense was kicking the bleep out of it day after day after day. Wasn't necessarily the case this year.
No.
In training camp. I mean, I ain't saying the offense went out there and went 98 Vikings on it, but it wasn't like the previous year where the defense won every single day.
No, you're right. And Cousins talked a lot. I mean, Cousins, you could see getting frustrated with it, because he just was kind of like, I want to be able to run a few reps of just get our offense installed and kind of run things at practice speed and have it all work the way I want it to. And this defense is just messing me up.
And can we see what a play looks like when it's actually successful plays just once or twice?
Because I think there was a lot of, I think he even said it kind of in a nice way, but we're not going to play this every week. I mean, it's helpful to practice against it because the level of difficulty comes down, but you're not playing this type of defense every single week. So practicing against it as much as they did, I think was getting on his nerves a little bit.
And Flores is so competitive. Now, this didn't happen, but let's pretend, and just from a metaphorical standpoint, Flores would be like, we got him. See, he's down. We got him. And he would pump his guys up. And then the other people would be like, no, he's on our team.
Yeah.
Okay, let him go. Yeah. Let him move a little bit.
Yeah.
It was so different this year than last year.
Yep. There's certainly some of those changes. And I think if he were to play them in a playoff game, because some of it with him is he's so, and for better or worse, he is very mechanical. It's okay. If one is covered, I'm going to 2. If 2 is covered, I'm going to 3. Kind of go through the progressions. He does it very well.
Yeah.
He's had a long, successful career because of it. But this defense jacks with your ability to do that. And I think that has caused him trouble in practice and could again.
See, Kirk is so, if this were the situation and the Vikings went to Atlanta to play a playoff game, I agree with everything you're saying, but Kirk is so smart that he will find 1.5 or 2 details.
Yeah.
Like 8.5 out of 10 times, Bynum does this.
Yeah.
And when you do this and send this there and that there, I'm just using Cam as sure. This guy does this.
People he's practiced against a lot.
There ain't much, but this guy does that, and I'm only required to go on a 5-step drop to get it there.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long that would last during the course of the game, but Kirk would be good at that.
Well, I was just kind of getting back to, is this team good, not great, great, not elite, elite, not Super Bowl bound? How much does style points? PA and I talked about this a lot because we keep, or I keep getting hammered, and I'm sure PA's been seeing it too. I keep getting hammered with, the Lions did this. The Lions dropped 50 on Levis. The Lions dropped 50 on the Jags. We're sweating some weird 12-7 bit and need a bunch of field goals just to get out alive in Jacksonville. And things were more precarious and weird at times than we wanted in Nashville. Meanwhile, they're just completely unstoppable. It is a freight train that is loose and won't come to a stop until sometime mid-February.
Yeah.
How much does that put? Because ultimately the Vikings are coming away with wins.
Yeah.
And the Vikings at 9-2 have nothing to apologize for about starting 5-0, as you mentioned, and bouncing back after a couple of tough, really 5 bad days with Detroit and the Rams.
Yep.
And now they've won 4 more. And the schedule, you were on the road for a month, PA. Now we're comfy confines for a month. Let's take advantage of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, how is it really, can it be just that basic where it's style points? You can look at similar stats between Goff and Darnold, but it's the style points. And is it that easy to look at the differences there?
I think perception wise, that's a lot of it right now. Certainly the Lions are doing things to
like
people.
Our team.
Yeah. The Lions are doing things to people that are making a lot of people take notice, and they obviously were the team that was in the NFC Championship game last year, so that probably adds to the optics. But the optics don't really matter in the end. What's going to matter is they're probably going to play Week 18 with something big on the line, I would think. If they can keep within a game of the Lions, whose schedule is tougher than the Vikings is. They've still got Buffalo in there. They have a Monday night in San Francisco. They have a Packers game in there yet. The Vikings have the Packers as well, but the Buffalo game, I think, is the tricky one for the Lions.
Yeah.
If you can keep yourself within a game, there's an NFC North title on the line Week 18. That's probably the Sunday night game. It's going to come down to how do they match up there.
Right.
And then how do they match up possibly a third time in the playoffs. And style points don't matter at that point. It's who can adjust to 120 minutes of tape that each team has on the other one and kind of come up with the last counter move that changes things. I think that may be all it boils down to in the end.
It's interesting, copyright Barrero. It depends on whose ox is getting gored. Because the Kansas City Chiefs could not make anything more difficult for themselves against any level of team they played.
Right.
They almost just lost to the Carolina Panthers.
Yep.
After the game, Mahomes, paraphrasing, was like, I'm done with this. I'm done with this close stuff. And so he kind of was like, we got to start putting the pedal to the metal and doing some things that were requisite of doing. And I thought that was interesting coming from somebody like that. But also reading between the lines and guessing here, he has the Lions in his vision out of one eye.
I'm sure he does.
Well, because Detroit knows how to beat Kansas City, and he knows it.
Yeah.
And Detroit does not fear Kansas City, and he knows it.
Yep.
And that would be a Mardi Gras matchup, which may not happen, or it may happen. But
if it does, it's Mahomes going for history.
And he's starting to look at it that way. Like, I already beat Jalen. Okay, now they're hot. That's cool and everything.
Yep.
And Sirianni's emotionally in control, and they're going okay. It's those other guys. And they know how to beat us.
Yeah.
And they've beaten us at Arrowhead. So I just sense that's where Patrick's gaze is being cast when he's like, we got to start winning these games a little more easily.
Yeah, that's very possible that it is there. They're going to have to worry about Buffalo. They would have to go on the road to Buffalo because they lost that game in the regular season, which I think changes things as well. If you have to go to Orchard Park in the playoffs.
It's at Buffalo.
It would be, because I think Buffalo would have the number 1 seed based on the fact that they beat them.
Yes, I got it.
In the regular season.
I was thinking of the Lions.
No, I'm looking ahead to NFC Championship or AFC Championship game kind of stuff. So should he be casting his gaze to the Super Bowl, they're going to have a lot of challenges too. But yes, I think he's probably sitting there saying there are only a couple of teams that we really can't beat in this thing or are going to have trouble with, that they probably can beat anybody. But I think, it's probably reasonable. Because you always say one game at a time, but if anybody is going to say, let's be honest and look ahead at where this is going to go, it's the guy that's won 2 straight Super Bowls. I think probably has a decent license to do that.
And he won at KC and at Baltimore last year.
Yeah.
I mean, so that was the question, right? Like, they couldn't get over the hump, the historic, crazy OT game in Arrowhead.
Yeah.
Well, but if we get them in Orchard Park, and I'm not saying you're dead on. That's going to be a tough place to play if it has to go there. But, I mean, they just went in and just mowed people down.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
a killer.
Something special right now.
That's Ben Goessling, courtesy of Standard Heating and Air, standardheating.com. We thank you very much for the sponsorship. And another segment with the Scribe is around the corner on KFAN.
Want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN program? Make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard message and data rates apply.
When I brought up the Van Ginkel situation earlier, misread my chicken scratch. Yeah, Minnesota's 5-1 on the road, 4th best road record under Kevin O'Connell since he started. And you wrote about the success away from U.S. Bank Stadium.
Yeah.
What's that bit?
Yeah, they are 15-8 since 2022 on the road, which is interesting. They're the 2nd best in the league this year, tied with, I think, the Ravens for the 4th best since 22. And even last year, they were 5-4 away from home. Obviously, the success or the lack of success at U.S. Bank Stadium last year was kind of a thorn in Kevin O'Connell's side, but they have been more successful on the road than almost any team in Vikings history. He's been more successful than any coach in Vikings history on the road other than Bud Grant. So
over a certain amount of games?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I looked at, the number of years where you win at least 5 on the road, so you're winning a majority of your games by 1 or 2, depending on if it's an 8 or 9 game road schedule. He's already got 3 of those seasons with 5 road wins. That's already tied with Denny Green for the 2nd most in Vikings history. In 3 years, obviously, Denny was here longer than that. So the ability to win on the road has been noticeable, and it comes after... I mean, Mike Zimmer, I think, was a couple games under 500 on the road, and you kind of say, well, split them on the road and win them all at home. That's great, but if you can win more of them on the road, I think that makes an awfully big difference. And he talked about having a scheme that will travel, and I think you saw a little bit of that late in that game where they're backed up, and some of those completions they get is just Darnold saying, I'm going to throw this in rhythm, I'm going to make the read that I need to make, and then you move on to the next play. I think that has helped them quite a bit, certainly this year.
Why did they cut a Caleb Evans?
Well, I think he had kind of fallen out of favor. I think last year he starts 15 games, loses that job at the end of the year.
Yeah, he can't play corner.
Right. I mean, and I think when Flores says, I'm not putting this guy back in, and it's really hard to come back from that. So he's down to a special teams role and really hadn't done a ton there either.
It's like the Kane Wanwu situation.
Yep.
Yeah, and Kane's on a practice squad.
Right.
We saw a team earlier that had him.
Yep.
But okay, outside, and I didn't think he was a very good gunner.
Yeah.
But he's an elite kick returner. And Caleb was a better gunner, from what I understand, than Kane Wanwu. But Marcus Sherrills is like watching this in Rochester saying, come on, I mean, neither one of them, both of them have a lot of work to do.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think it got to the point where, I mean, they've been so tight on roster spots here where they're trying to get guys off of injured reserve. I mean, even the decision yesterday, Nick Muse gets brought back, wished a happy birthday on social media, and then is cut later in the day. And he may be back on the practice squad, but they are really tight on roster spots at the moment. Some of it is they are fairly healthy because you have guys coming back up injured reserve. I mean, they're going to have to find a spot for Gabriel Murphy here as well. But I think some of it is just that roster spot game, and we talk about Daniel Jones. You'll have to figure that out too if he would end up here in some capacity. It's just kind of a
what's with the Gabriel Murphy spot? I mean, I've heard that. Heard that 3 times. Where?
I don't know. That's the thing.
That just. I mean, if they make Gabriel Murphy, if they put him on the active roster, and he's not in active game days, then that means that he either has a chance to pass Dallas Turner, or you're going to take Dallas's reps defensively, all 6 of them.
Yeah. I'm not sure there's much of a spot for him either, but I do think they are interested in having him available in case something happens where you have more depth at that position. So, I mean, the fact that they have continued to try to bring him back and you're going through the 21-day practice window rather than just saying, we're going to make this a redshirt year, I think there's interest in having him on the roster, but the trick becomes there just aren't very many spots at the moment. So a lot of these decisions get made when they're trying to play the game of, can we get a guy to a practice squad? Can we put him through waivers and still have him available to us in a day? I mean, you're playing a lot of that game. And then with Evans, when it's a former 4th-round pick, the risk you take is that somebody's going to pick him up.
Ben Goessling, courtesy of Standard Heating and Air, standardheating.com, covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune, startribune.com. We have a newsletter in the mix. You can learn about that at Ben Goessling. We also have Access Vikings, the podcast, which he and Andrew Kramer did after the Soldier Field game. Learn more about that at Ben Goessling. Also, this is where I saw this. Aaron Jones is the Minnesota Vikings nominee for the Art Rooney Sportsmanship Award.
Yep.
Working with Aaron Jones as a member of the media, what leads to becoming a nominee for this? What goes into that type of person? Yeah,
I think a lot of it is, players see how he carries himself, probably certainly on the field and then in practice. I think there's a lot of those things that go into it. I mean, Danielle Hunter, I think, was always a nominee for this, and a lot of it with him was always he almost never had a personal foul for a guy that was as dominating as he could be. So some of it, I think, is people saying, hey, Aaron Jones plays the game the right way. He's not a guy that's lowering his helmet. He's not doing things to exact a toll that he doesn't have to. But the number of things you hear about him in that locker room in terms of how he leads, how he is as a teammate, you heard a lot of these things about him in Green Bay. I remember
and they're true.
Yeah, that he's had that said about him long enough that I don't think you can fake it for that long. I mean, I heard that a lot from Packers beat writers, how much they enjoyed covering him.
Yeah.
And then when he comes here, they kind of said, hey, man, you got a good one to cover. And that has certainly been the case with our dealings with him as well. So I think a lot of it is just a recognition of him doing things the right way and conducting himself the right way. So not his first honor like this, but certainly well-deserved from my vantage point.
Lastly, Jefferson. Justin, authentically and truly being comfortable with what's happening on offense.
Yeah.
Where do you feel he is comfortable with it? And I mean, what I'm going to ask this to O'Connell in 25 minutes is, after what was put on tape, doesn't matter against who, it's an NFL team, do you think things will loosen now that you got somebody on 162, 114, you ran for 100, you got explosive? I mean, the team is either tied with Detroit or one behind Detroit for the most 20-yard completions of anybody in the NFL. So it's not like they're not getting down the field because Jefferson's getting tripled and doubled and tripled. But how Justin feels about all this. What do you think?
Well, I think he has seen the big picture, but I do sense a little bit of frustration there because this is a guy that has wanted to break records. He talks about Canton quite a bit, even at this age of his career. And I think PA said it with you last week. He's already doing things, even with all of this coverage going his way, that put him in that conversation where you're starting to say, what's the list of the best of all time? And I don't know that you put a guy there after 5 years, but he's certainly on a trajectory to put himself in that conversation relatively shortly. So I think those pieces of things, and just being a guy that is confident in his abilities and says, we're better when I get the ball, I think there's a little bit of frustration there, but they've also done a good job. I think he generally sees the big picture. He's a guy that I remember those first couple of years. So I think still, this is the case, has played more playoff games at LSU than he has for the Vikings, because he goes on that run at LSU. They win a couple of games. They win a national championship. He still only played one with the Vikings. So there were years, I think, early on where they didn't make it that you could see the frustration building up with him. He just was not used to the losing, and I don't think he likes it very much. I mean, you see a lot of that after they lose he takes it pretty hard. So I think a lot of it is a conversation with O'Connell, trying to kind of keep everybody on the same page. But he seems like he sees the bigger picture. And as he said last week, if it's me eating or everybody else eating, I'll take everybody else. And you do wonder at some point if everybody's going to say, it's not worth dying on this hill and letting everybody else beat the defense. Maybe some of those things get loosened up. If it's not going to loosen up after that, maybe it's just not going to happen. I mean, that would seem like the thing that would do it.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
You and your family, man.
Yes.
Appreciate you. That's Ben Goessling, and News du Nord is around the corner, walking us up to Kevin O'Connell, joining 9 to noon, about 15 minutes from now.
Hey, Rubes, this football season, Bell Bank is giving one KFAN listener each week $1,000 to pay it forward to a charity of their choice. Just head over to KFAN.com, keyword contest to learn more and enter today. That's KFAN.com, keyword contest.
News du Nord and Mr. Eric Nordquist pushing through some circumstances to deliver the news. About the best way to put it with your baby voice.
Yeah, I don't know what on earth. This is, I mean, we're going on 2 weeks right now where it is just
give it a good watch when O'Connell comes in and I do this. He for some reason he just gets the biggest kick out of to clear the throat.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll do it when he comes in, then you do it, and we'll see what he does.
Okay, perfect. So I got to make it to that point. He absolutely loves it, though. I've seen him smile every single time you do it.
Simple pleasures, though.
News du Nord is brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Poker, blackjack, table games, feeling the felt all year round. And, of course, Canterbury's open on Thanksgiving. Is that accurate?
I believe so.
Of course they would be.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good NFL pick'em day. So if you get a chance, get the turkey spatchcock, the whole thing.
10 a.m. with an 11:30 game. You better get in there early.
That's what I'm saying.
What's up, analyst?
No breaks at Canterbury Park. My favorite family spot, my favorite poker, blackjack, and table game spot. Go to CanterburyPark.com. My favorite hoops team has a chance.
For your baby voice right now.
Yeah.
At Canterbury at Chip's Bar. How about some warm brandy?
Oh, come on.
I mean, not the song by Looking Glass.
Is Derek working tomorrow?
That's a very good. No, I don't. That's a very good question. Not sure.
Well, I wonder, maybe he could get me, hook me up with a little hot toddy. So a little bourbon, a little peach tea,
hey, look, Lolita,
and a bit of honey.
Lolita and Tanqueray have nothing to do with this. We're talking about something liquid, okay?
Well, correct, yes. Canterbury's a family establishment. You'd have to go elsewhere, farther east, maybe outside of the 7-county metro, and you can find your spot.
My name is Lolita. It's my friend Tanqueray.
We are some of our decisions in life. There is no doubt about that. The Minnesota Timberwolves, maybe just some decisions into terms of how they're going to handle the Houston Rockets tonight, PA. Cool, valiant effort in Boston. You nailed it. They always play the Celtics good. But we're more worried with an 8-8 team, not about them losing by 2 to the Celtics, and there's drama at the end, a chance to hit a bucket, it rims out, couldn't get the shot off in time. Not caring about that as much as losing to a 3-win Raptors bunch with a Scotty Barnes who's just recently come off the shelf, and some of the things that go into those situations. Now, Houston's no bargain, and with Jalen Green, and they got Amin Thompson, Sengun, Van Vliet, they can put some points on the board. There's no doubt about it. But if you're thinking about a team rolling into the holidays with good vibes, and you know how Finchie's squeezing this thing together right now with these new faces in the mix, you got to beat the Rockets at Target Center this evening. 7 p.m. tip-off at Target Center.
The Rockets remind me of their National Football League counterparts from the same city, the Houston Texans.
Ooh.
Got a lot of shine with Jalen Green. A lot of shine with a lot of these players. They can score a lot of points. Their dunks are very cool. Their reverse layups with their left hands are unbelievable. At the end of the equation, the Timberwolves are a better team than the Houston Rockets. Emphasis on the word team. And I'm with you, man. I mean, it's 8-8, and you know, I'm not must-win guy in Game 17. But I had the opportunity yesterday to watch back the half of the third quarter and the fourth quarter of that Celtics game. It was on FanDuel in the middle of the day, and it I just know I'm right here, man. They lollygag through stuff like we got you when we want you.
The push button bit.
And they did again. And they came running at those Celtics with Jaden McDaniels had a dunk and Dillingham was getting everybody all wound up and excited.
So who leads that aura though? Is that Ant? And I adore Ant, but
I can't. Well,
is it Olympics? It's Netflix. It's feeling your oats.
But see,
it's
Randall
Western Conference Final.
Randall wasn't on the team last year, neither was DiVincenzo.
No, that's true.
And those are two major components. Gobert has decided to rebound like Rudy Gobert can rebound, block shots like Rudy Gobert can block shots. And it just seems to me like one by one, I think they're going to snap to life and become cohesive and win a bunch of games in a row. Gobert's performance from a quarter and a half that I watched, absolutely amazing. Randall's a ball hog. Julius Randle is a ball hog. So is Anthony Edwards. Those aren't bad things. Unless you can't figure out who's going to hog it, when, and why. Those are two high-end alphas.
Yeah.
And they both, and I mean, 10 to 10 people are taking Edwards over Randall, but Julius can score, and he scores different ways than Anthony. So if they can figure out how to keep these things close and have isolation games with Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards at the ends of games, they're going to be in a really good position. Getting there is more problematic than I thought.
Yeah, that was the talker pre-trade is how Julius Randle and that ball handling and in some ways that hogging that you're mentioning there. Let's get a W tonight. Lastly, you had John Hines, head coach of the Wild, on. Terrific conversation with him. Tough game last night. I mean, they put 40-some shots and Hellebuck was just unbeatable outside of Jake Middleton early in that difficult one. But it's a grinder, and it's it's classic game in some respects of they did everything the right way, even sans Kaprizov, and they still just couldn't find their way through it. No,
he played last night.
They're in Buffalo. Excuse me, you're right. Yeah. He skated yesterday and played. So they're at Buffalo tomorrow, 6 p.m. Go beat up on the Sabres. They're still safely second in the Central.
Yeah.
But get that W tomorrow for the hockey team.
Different conversation with them because it's clear they're good. It's clear they can play Dallas and Winnipeg in very tightly knit fashion. But it's also clear they're not beating those teams.
Right.
And if you go back like a month or maybe a year and a month, 13, 14 months, they're like 13-2 against Winnipeg, Colorado, and Dallas.
Yep.
Well, that's moving forward. That's a problem.
The Russo kind of had in the same way that Alec Lewis did the turnover margin tally. He kind of had that going last year and maybe even prior to that where they were beating everybody at the bottom of the barrel, but this is how bad they've been doing against Dallas. This is the struggles they've had against Vegas. You mentioned Winnipeg as well, that the high-end teams, and that's kind of some Vikings fans thinking about that as well, is how are we going to work against the contenders
Vikings coach Kevin O'Connell's next on KFAN.